Why do we feel it's necessary to yak about bullshit in order to be comfortable?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's I, your reluctant gringo, back again. And today, wow. I just wow. If you've seen the news, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, listen, I'm at that age where I didn't think anything in this world could surprise me anymore. I really was. Today proved me wrong. And it just happened to be my religion that proved me wrong. For those of you that have been with me for a little while know that I am a born and raised Catholic to this day, Catholic. Yeah, so with the words today that came out of the Vatican, and I'll read them as best as I can in the Latin. Annuncio vobis gaudium, habemus papam. Now, in English, that translates, I announce to you a great joy. We have a pope. And he's an American. I never in my lifetime, never in my wildest thoughts did I think an American would ever be elected pope to head the Catholic Church for various reasons. And some of them a little more, I guess, cynical than others. But yes, we have a new pope. And for the Catholics, the 1.4 billion of us around the world, we have a new pope. And I really thought they were going to choose either the Italian that was in the race, or the Ghanaian, or the Filipino cardinal, based off of just how large those Catholic populations are and how quickly they are growing. Just as sort of like a nod to them as well, that we accept and encourage and welcome you. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would get a guy born in Chicago. And I guess if you need something done right, you call somebody from Chicago, right? But yes, we've got, there he is. That is Pope Leo the 14th, the new pope. And he was previously known as the most eminent and most reverend Lord Robert Francis, Cardinal of the Holy Roman Church, Prevost. And again, he took the name Leo the 14th. Of course, he just recently became a cardinal in 2023. He's not been a cardinal very long. He was appointed by the previous pope, Pope Francis. Now, Pope Francis appointed a bunch of cardinals, I think almost over 100 cardinals, in an effort to transform the church into a more of a sort of way of his thinking, or his sort of, well, here's the thing. You know, a lot of people think, well, we were like, you know, a pope is not like a president. A pope can't just come in, get elected, and say, we're going to do this, this, and that, and sign a bunch of executive orders. This is not Trump country, okay? It doesn't work like that. He can't sit at an Oval Office desk, sign his name to a bunch of stuff, and change the world. The Catholic Church is headed by the Pope, yes. But in the end, no man can change the teachings of Jesus Christ. You may be able to administer the papacy in a different way. You may be able to enforce church doctrine that may not be something that was enforced on a consistent basis in the past to sort of steer things. But in the end, the teachings of Jesus Christ are the teachings of Jesus Christ. There's no changing those. There's no, I'm going to go back and rewrite the Bible. So with that, yes, I'm still in shock. I really am. I was in tears of both surprise and joy for, again, various reasons that we'll get into. I think this is the right decision. After I got over my initial shock, which just hit me, like when they announced his name, everyone was shocked. The world was shocked. Now, I want you to think back, if you can, if you remember, if you watched it, or if you recollect it, when they announced previous names, when they announced the previous Pope, Pope Francis. As soon as they got the name out, even halfway through getting the name out, the crowd went nuts, went wild. The crowd didn't know what to do. when they announced this man. The crowd had no idea. They were stunned. They could not believe that this was the man elected Pope simply based that this is an American. Holy crap. I mean, most of the Italians in Rome were hoping for an Italian because they hadn't had one since 1970, 71. And a lot of them really thought and this guy wasn't even on the radar. If you look back at the Vegas odds, this Cardinal, Leo XIV now, wasn't even on the Vegas odds or any of the odd sheets or even in the running. He wasn't even there. He was talked about on the fringes a little bit, but he wasn't even really there. And to see his name or to hear his name get announced and to see that happen, again, as a Catholic, shocking. As an Italian, it must have been really shocking. But the crowd it was a murmur. There was a murmur. Almost as if like, are they joking? Is this what? But realizing that this is not a joke, there is an American elected as Pope. Why is that so shocking? Okay, let's break this down, okay? Listen, yes, this is a religion, first and foremost, but at a close second, this is a political organization. It used to be when you were Pope, you were a king, you were a monarch. We all remember that from middle school history classes, right? The Holy Roman Empire. They were kings. So yes, it's a financial institution. The Vatican Bank is massive. Massive. It does all sorts of international trading and things like that. Some of it in the past has not been all that great. All that up and up. But why was it so shocking that an American was chosen as Pope? It wasn't so much shocking as realize the rest of the world looks at America and says, wow, that's the most powerful country on earth. Wow, a lot of the political power, definitely most of the military power, and a good chunk of economic power, if not a good deal. It's the largest economy in the world, too, as well. Now you're going to give it, now you're going to say a good chunk of religious power is in the hands of an American. And that's how the rest of the world sort of sees this initially. They're like, oh, whoa, hey, wait a minute. Do we really want to do this? Do we really want to hand over that kind of power again to an American, right? It's not that they hate Americans, okay? Yes, there is a strong, right now there's a divisiveness going on throughout Europe, throughout a lot of the world with America, with what's going on. And I'm not here to debate that or say it exists or doesn't exist. It does, right? It does. It always has. When you're considered the most powerful country and the most prosperous country in the world, you're going to get some mixed feelings about that. But now you've got the most visible. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you think about just thinking off the top of your head, you got Islam, you've got Protestantism, you got Judaism, the Jewish faith. None of the leaders of those faiths are as prominent or as influential politically or anywhere else than the Pope. It is what it is, folks. Right? It is what it is. And that's why there was such I think, almost a subconscious, unconscious, visceral reaction when this man was announced. Now, do I think they got a good choice here? Absolutely. I think they absolutely have a great choice here. Let me pull up this picture for everybody here. If you haven't seen it already, pardon me here for a second. Boom, there he is. There's our buddy, Robert Prevost, elected as first American Pope and takes the name Leo XIV. The man was humble. The man was holding back tears. The man presented himself for the first time on the world stage as Papa, as we call him down here in Mexico, in a way that I think really softened the blow of an American being elected. Now, is he purely an American? No, he's also a Peruvian citizen. So he's a Peruvian. So he's a Latin American. So for the Latinos out there, you got another one right after Francis. And hey, the man's done the work. When we go through his biography a little bit, just to learn a bit about him. Yes, he was born and raised in Chicago. He went to Villanova University. Cool. I got some certificates from Villanova. Great school. Highly intelligent. Speaks at least 4 languages that we know of: English, Latin, Italian. His Italian was flawless. And of course, Spanish. He is the first Augustine priest. He's from the order of St. Augustine. So he's the first one of those from that order to be elected pope. He's the second Latin American behind Francis. He's the first American. So a mold breaker. A mold breaker. And don't think that this wasn't done with a certain purpose in mind. Now, a lot of the times they like to say the conclave is, 130 so cardinals, 127, 120, however many there are now, that get to vote. If you're under age 75, I believe you get under age 80, you get to vote. They say, well, it's in God's hands. Well, let me tell you something. God's hands might have been there, but so is world politics. And don't think that world politics did not play a little bit in the hand in this, and we'll get into that in a second. But do I think he was the right choice? Absolutely. What a humble man. Now, immediately after you are elected pope, you go into a room called the Room of Tears. It's a very solitary, small room where you choose your clothing. You choose how you're going to present yourself. You could choose to be the gaudy with the big hat and everything like that. I'm glad they got rid of the big hat, right? Pope John Paul II, when I was a kid, used to wear the big hat all the time. I'm like, it just wasn't very becoming. It made you look sort of, I don't know, unrelatable. I like it when they go without the hat or just a little cap. So anyways, you go in there, and the reason why they call it the Room of Tears is in that moment, most popes will break down and cry. Most newly elected popes will break down in tears because they realize, oh shit, I'm the pope. The weight of what just dropped on you, whether you wanted it or not, and I don't think this guy wanted it. As Francis once famously said, and a great movie, by the way, called The Two Popes with Anthony Hopkins and another gentleman there, I can't remember his name, Jonathan Pryce. They play the two popes, the two previous popes, in the history and how that happened. But there's a great line that Pope Francis had, is that you should elect somebody who doesn't want to be pope. Anybody who wants to be pope shouldn't be pope. If you're lobbying to be pope, you shouldn't be pope. It means you don't have the humility. It means you have pride, one of the 7 deadly sins, the highest of all sins. Pride, the one that, if we're going to go biblical, that's the sin committed by Lucifer, caused his fall from heaven down to hell. So you shouldn't want to be pope. But I don't think this gentleman, in any stray stretch of his imagination, thought to himself, I want to be pope. He presented himself in the most humble way. And he won that crowd over by the end, because that crowd, when he first came out, they were like, it's an American. That's all they could think. It's all they could think. But then they say, oh, wait, he's a Latin American. Oh, wait, he was appointed by Francis. Then he invoked the name of Francis, which, he was very close with Francis, of course. And Francis appointed him cardinal in 2023. Now, a lot of this is, again, shocking to a lot of people because, again, you have a lot of power in the hands of the world, or world power in the hands of Americans. And that's how the rest of the world sees it. So there's going to be an adjustment period with this Pope. Do I think he's going to be all right? I think he's going to be all right. He addressed the crowd in, again, flawless Italian, which not a lot of, all the cardinals need to learn Italian. Not all of them can speak it flawlessly. Then he addressed Peru, where he became a citizen and was the bishop down there in Peru. And he addressed them and thanked them and made sure he acknowledged his journey there. He did not speak in English. He did speak in Latin as well with the prayers. But as it goes, there it is. We've been watching a damn chimney on a roof for the last 2 days, 24 hours. It was a quick vote. 4 votes. Took 4 votes. Which means that the conclave, a lot of them went in there predetermined going, this is what we need. Now, I want you to understand that this is a gentleman who, again, was appointed by Francis. Francis was very progressive. Very progressive. All right? He spoke often and passionately about migrants. He spoke about immigration. He spoke out against what's going on in the United States when it comes to immigration, meaning that he believed that the United States currently, with the president we have, lacks compassion. And let's face it, folks, Donald Trump, and you've watched me sit here and defend a ton of his positions and a ton of his policies because I think they make sense. I think they're logical. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about Francis and Francis's criticism of Donald Trump. Francis's criticism of Donald Trump is that he lacks compassion, universal compassion. That is something that we can have a talk about at some point in time. Is Donald Trump the most compassionate man you've ever seen hold the presidency? No, he's not. Then again, I don't really vote for the most compassionate guy to be U.S. president. That's not one of my criteria. I'm not looking for compassion. Okay, it's a different role. It's a different thing, right? But this man now, Leo the 14th, is from that mold of Francis. And he has spoken out passionately as well about the rights of migrants and immigration and what we should do and how we should be charitable and we should all live missionary lives and reach out and accept. One thing he said in his speech is this church should welcome everyone. Everyone. Kind of radical for a church that, when I was growing up as a kid, did not welcome people of the LGBTQ community. At least not openly. But if they did welcome them, it was to try and fix them. But here you have a pope who says, no, we need to welcome everyone. Now, is he a progressive like Francis? He's a centrist with some progressive tendencies. In that, I mean, Francis was on the verge of letting women serve as priests, right? Or he was even considering, and I'm not sure how far this idea got, letting priests get married, which, by the way, priests used to be able to get married. I think it was in the 1200s that the Catholic Church actually changed that rule. It used to be priests could have wives under certain circumstances. They could have wives, and that got changed. But is this Pope that radical? No. He's progressive, but not that progressive. So he's not for women serving as priests. At least as of right now, he could change his mind. But is this election of this Pope a reaction to what's going on in the world? Hell yes. And if you think that it was just the hand of God at play, and maybe it was, because maybe the hand of God said, I need somebody to counteract all the shit that's going on right now. We have wars breaking out everywhere. We have division, we have trade wars, we have economic wars, we have immigration issues, we have human rights issues, we have human trafficking. And not like we didn't have all those things before, but it seems like right now things are getting a little out of control. You know, India and Pakistan are escalating. Those are two nuclear powers. We talked about them yesterday. For some odd reason, I read an article today that Donald Trump's administration put a bunch of Asian illegal immigrants on a plane and we're going to send them to Libya. Why? Don't know. They just wanted them out of the country. They're not from Libya. Libya is in North Africa, and folks, it's not a nice place to go. It never has been. But why are we sending? A federal judge stepped in and said, what are you doing? These people are from Vietnam. If you want to send them somewhere, which you can't yet because they haven't had due process, fine, we can argue that too. But you just can't send them to any country you freaking like. Hey, we know you're from Vietnam. You don't speak the language. You have no idea what's going on. We're going to drop you off in the middle of the Northern African desert. Good fucking luck. Okay, again, compassion. So maybe the hand of God was in play here. Maybe the hand of God was in some way watching over this and saying, yeah, it's an American. Maybe we need an American to talk to this other American and say, hey, maybe we need to slow things down. Again, you've heard me defend Donald Trump a bunch of times. You heard me be very critical of him in certain things too as well. I'm not an apologist, nor am I a zealot. But let's face it, folks, things are getting a little extreme out there one way or the other. And maybe a lot of people will say extreme situations or extreme problems need extreme solutions. Sometimes that's a correct way to look at things. Sometimes it's the way to fuck things up even more. But absolutely can't get over. I'm still shocked. Shocked that an American is now Pope. Shocked. Happy shocked. The rest of the world is dealing with it right now. Peru's loving it. Chicago's going nuts. The guy's a Cubs fan. Go Cubbies, I guess. You know? And he seems like a measured man. He seems like an intelligent man. He comes across as a passionate, compassionate man. He seems like he's very in touch with understanding what the faith truly is, not what it should be, but what it is. The rest of the Cardinals seem extremely happy that they chose this man. I think they knew something going in that they just didn't want anyone else to know. I think they knew that they needed something different and something radical, something that was going to announce to the world, hey, to the 1.4 billion Catholics and to the rest of you out there, we're still here. Yeah, we've made mistakes in the past. Yes, the institution of the Catholic Church, take it from a guy from Boston where the whole priest-clergy abuse scandal first originated and crushed me as a Catholic. Yes, the institution itself has made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, but it's an institution of men, not an institution. It's not run by God. God is just, it's in glory and honor of God, right? So there have been mistakes, and some of them kind of unforgivable sometimes, but as Catholics, we try to forgive everything. And I think this is one of those next steps that Francis is quietly put into place. And even from his death, Francis is doing the right thing, making sure the church survives, making sure the church is on the right path, making sure the church, and I hate to use this term, change with the times, because that's not what the church should be doing. The church should be continually evaluating its own mission, saying, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And it's pretty simple. I know in the 90s, we used to wear little bracelets, you know. I never wore it, but I used to see people wear, what would Jesus do? Well, it's a pretty simple question. As a Catholic, you should be asking yourself that question whenever you're confused about something. What would Jesus do? You know, if he was standing right next to you, would you make that same decision? If you had to explain it to him later on, which in my faith and my belief, yes, all the decisions I make in life, I'm going to have to explain to him at some point in time. I got to be okay explaining those things to him. So again, that's the mission of the church. If you're confused about what to do with the church, and then if you're the part of the church, it's really what you should be at. What would Jesus want us to do? Would they want us to be involved in these political situations? Would they want us to be involved in these culture wars? Would they want us to be involved in banking? That's a good one. Not really sure. I never really heard. I've read my Bible cover to cover about 22 times in my life. And that's no joke. I really have. Went to a Catholic school and everything. I don't remember Jesus going to accountant school. I must have missed that part. I know there's 30 years of his life missing. It was part of the historical record when he was growing up, but I don't think there was a business school in his repertoire there on his resume. But he did feed the hungry. He did clothe the naked. He did heal the sick. He did comfort those in pain. And whether you believe he is who he is, like I do, he still did those things. And he still, whether you believe I don't believe Gandhi is the son of God. But you know what? He's still an example. I don't believe Martin Luther King was the son of God, like Jesus Christ, but he's an example to follow. But for me, it's like, as a member, if you're Pope now, that's the question you should be asking. Is my church that I'm leading right now doing what Jesus would want us to do? And yes, President Trump can't wait to meet him. I think President Trump should hold off on that sentiment. I don't think President Trump's going to want to hear a lot of what the Pope's going to say to him. Being a bishop, a former bishop and then cardinal from Latin America, seeing the immigration issues firsthand, seeing the issues of narco-terrorism firsthand, seeing the issues of economic disparity firsthand. If I'm Pope Leo XIV, the first thing I ask Donald Trump is, you're very fond of invoking the Monroe Doctrine. For those of you that forget your history, the Monroe Doctrine was written way long ago under the President James Monroe, sixth president of the United States. Fourth. Madison was fifth. And it basically said to the European powers, the rest of the world, stay out of Latin America, stay out of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. We control it. We'll take care of it. Well, Donald Trump very famously loves invoking it, just like Ronald Reagan used to invoke it all the time. Stay out of the Western Hemisphere. Stay out of Latin America. So the first question I asked, since you like invoking it so much, what are you doing to protect it? What are you doing to help it? You know, it's a tough question to answer. Yep. The Leon of Judah. Leon de Judah. I think they got it right. So this Pope's got a lot. He's inheriting a world that, again, like I said, is on fire. He's got a war brewing. He's got a war that's been going on for 2 years. He's got another war on the eastern front of Europe. He's got another war in Gaza. That's about to escalate. As we said the other day, Israel declared its intentions to conquer Gaza and forcibly displace and remove all the people of Palestine. You've got a war again brewing again between India and Pakistan. You've got wars galore that aren't even reported. Do yourself a favor if you want to see exactly what's going on in the world. Google wars, current conflicts in Africa, current military conflicts in Africa. I bet you don't have enough time in your day, free time in your day, to read everything that's going on there. And he talks about peace. And that was his message today. Peace and acceptance of everyone within the church. I'm happy. I'm sure a lot of Americans are happy. I think this Pope is going to turn out to be the one Francis wanted after him. Now, usually a Pope can't choose his own successor, nor should he influence it in any way. Not supposed to, but I think in this way, yes, Francis got the Pope he wanted to succeed him. And I think the Catholic Church is about to step into a new era. He's a younger man, a younger Pope. I'm not sure, let's see his age, 69 years old. That's fairly young for a Pope. Francis, I believe, was 74, almost 75 when he was elected. Pope Gregory wasn't that young either. So he's going to be in that chair. He's going to be in the chair of St. Peter's for a long, long time. I can't wait till he visits Mexico. All the popes usually come to Mexico at least once. That'll be fun to see. Very Catholic country down here. I can't wait till he visits the United States. That'll be fun. I can't wait till he's in the Oval Office. I hope they have cameras. I hope they have a press conference. I hope President Trump sits there next to the Pope and let's see that conversation. I really would love to see that. And nothing against President Trump. President Trump is who he is. He doesn't apologize for being who he is. He's never going to apologize for being, whether you like him or don't like him. And let me tell you something. I haven't had this much entertainment watching a president since Bill Clinton. And the reason Bill Clinton was entertaining because he was always lying. They called him Slick Willie. Even the press called him Slick. But President Trump, he's entertaining because he rules the room in which he's in. Right? You look at any press conference that he's in. If there's a camera in that room, President Trump rules it. I can't wait to see what happens when the Pope is in there, because a little harder to rule a room when you got the Pope sitting next to you. Again, nothing. I'm not here to criticize Trump in any way, but I'm here to juxtapose the Trump administration and what's going on with the policies there, with maybe why this selection of Pope came to be. And again, that's just me thinking as a 50-year-old Catholic. It's just me thinking as someone who has an adult son who spent a great deal of time at the Vatican, years and years, and can speak about the Vatican ins and outs on a more deep basis than I can. Someone who served the church myself for a long, long time. So do I think this was just coincidental? No, it wasn't coincidental, folks. If you want to call it the hand of God and faith, yes, you can do that. But I think the hand of God and faith coupled with crap, we need somebody to kind of maybe counteract some of this stuff going on right now. Or maybe have maybe more of a global leader, someone who looks at the world and go, hey, let's all work it out, because right now it's a lot of conflict. We've got a lot of conflict on every issue. You name an issue, we have conflict. And sometimes that conflict is necessary. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're using a sledgehammer when we should be using a scalpel. But neither here nor there. So, he's a leader with global experience. He spent much of his career as a missionary in South America, and most recently led a powerful Vatican office for bishop appointments. He's expected to build on Pope Francis's reforms. He'll build on some of them. He won't build on all of them. The thing about now Francis was unique. He was from Argentina. It's a little different than the rest of Latin America, and I'll tell you that. That's the thing about, by the way, with Americans. If you're from New England, if you see someone who's brown, you think they're Puerto Rican. If you're from California and you're a white American, you see someone who's brown, you think they're Mexican. If you're from Florida, you see someone who's brown, you think they're Cuban. Okay? And people down here hate that. My wife, she's Mexican. Call her Cuban, call her Puerto Rican, she's going to get pissed off. Same thing with everybody else from every other country. If you're from Chile, you're Chilean, Argentina, and whatnot. So Argentina is a very unique group of people. Very proud, sometimes known as being a little egotistic. But Central America and Northern South America, those are people who are a little bit more conservative. Definitely way rooted in Catholicism, of course. So I think this Pope's a little bit more conservative than Francis. So I don't think he's going to be making the types of progressive reforms that we saw Francis attempting and trying to shore up in his waning days. So he worked for a decade in Trujillo, Peru, and was later appointed Bishop of Chiclayo, another Peruvian city where he served from 2014 to 2023. By the way, being a bishop or a priest or anything in Central and South America is not an easy gig. They get killed a lot. Just a few months ago down here, there was a priest in northern Mexico. And there were some children running to the church looking for sanctuary, safety, because they had nowhere else to go. The police weren't helpful. These children were going to be taken by the cartel because that's what the cartels do. They take children, they put guns in their hands and say, you work for us now. And this is your life. These group of children didn't want this. They wanted to live their own life. So they ran to the church thinking God will save them. God will protect them. And the priest took them in. The priest was butchered right in his church, inside of his church. And the kids were taken. This happens a lot. Violence against religious figures in Central and South America and in Mexico is a very, very common thing. It's not the easiest life you could live. If you don't believe me, look at the history of Francis. He had to live through it in Argentina and during those times in the 50s with the Perón regime. But right now, it's still not easy. I mean, to be a police officer or journalist or a religious figure in most Latin American countries, especially Central and South, especially Central and Northern South America, is a dangerous thing sometimes. So, good for him for sticking through it. Prevost is a member of the Augustinian religious order, which he also led for more than decades as a prior general, which has given him leadership experience of leading an order spread across the world. Now, the Augustine is of course, named after St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the great scholars of Catholicism from back in the day, and has written books and books and books and books, and books have been written about him. But that's a huge order. That's a huge order of priests that do a lot of work around the world. Considered a highly capable and accomplished leader, Prevost most recently led the powerful Vatican office. We talked about that. So here you go. You got somebody who is, here's some of his background. He earned a bachelor's in mathematics from Villanova University in Pennsylvania. Again, I have certificates from that. It's not an easy college, a good college. Went on to receive his diploma in theology from the Catholic Theological Union of Chicago. He was later sent to Rome to study canon law at the Pontifical St. Thomas Aquinas University and was ordained as a priest in June of 1982. He's also taught canon law. The guy's no dummy. That's what I'm trying to get to you. He's no dummy. He knows his stuff. He knows science and he knows religion. So he's no dummy. It's really refreshing that you have someone who's rooted in both. It's really interesting to see in a day and age where science and religion are still so far apart from each other, someone who can find truth in both. Because there is truth in science and there is truth in religion. It just depends on what truth you're looking for. All right? And so, that is our new pope. Let me get back to this here. Sorry, I'm running quick here because I wanted to watch the whole thing, and I wanted to watch his speech, and I wanted to see all that. But yes, first, here we go. Mission in Peru, we talked about that. Just recently created Cardinal by Francis. And here's our number. I mean, he's been Pope for what, 3 hours now? 3 hours, and he's already shocked the world. Now, President Trump did post on Truth Social his congratulations, called it a great honor for the country. And I know I keep saying American Pope, but I say that more in a historical context than a national pride context. It's not a national pride thing. I just didn't think it would ever happen because of the reasons I've already laid out. Well, President Trump said it's a great honor for the country. I guess you could see it that way. But this man is now the head of a universal church, a global church. He is not looking at himself in the mirror and saying to himself, I'm an American. I doubt that he does. Even though he was born and raised in Chicago, if he was going to consider himself anything, he probably considers himself Peruvian, if anything. But right now, what does he consider himself? Because he's Pope. And he's got the weight of 1.4 billion of us on his shoulders. And as he said, we will walk together into the land that God promised us and prepared for us. And that's what us Catholics believe. You know, I know it's hard for some people out there to kind of say to me or kind of think like, why, how can you believe that? And I get asked that a lot by people. And I don't usually talk about faith and religion too much on this because I know it's such a divisive topic, for lack of a better term. But people ask me, how can you believe this? How can you believe that? Faith. People ask, what do you mean faith? I go, faith. I just know it here. Just like there's a bunch of you out there that have different faiths and you know it here. Your faith is different from mine and you would think that I'm wrong and I would think that you're not practicing the right thing, but that's my opinion, your opinion. But what you know here. You know? And that's faith. And that's what we believe. And that's why today is a day of celebration. It's a day of jubilation. It's a day of renewal of faith. You know, we said goodbye to Pope Francis, who was an excellent Pope. Excellent Pope. We say hello and we welcome this new one. And hopefully the church moves in the direction that we need it to. Now, make no mistake, the Vatican, as the smallest city-state in the world, smallest country in the world, is a bureaucracy. And bureaucracies don't move quickly. They don't change easily either. In fact, bureaucracies usually resist change in a lot of ways, in the most aggressive ways. And so this Pope is surrounded by hopefully 100 of the cardinals that were appointed by Francis with the same mindset of needing to do what's right for the church as opposed to what's right for man. And hopefully we start to see some movement, but we'll see. Again, we're 3 hours in and people are already making predictions, but I'm happy. Pleasantly happy. I thought it was going to be the Ghanan. I honestly thought it was going to be the Ghanan, and everybody thought I was crazy saying that there's no way they elect a black Pope. I don't see it as a black and white thing when it comes to religion. I just want them to choose the right guy. I think they chose the right guy right now because I didn't think this guy was in the running. I didn't think he was going to be, but I think they chose the right guy. And that's the Pope. But let me know what you think. Excited, not excited, shocked? Think it makes a difference at all? Do you think there's a political reasoning behind this? Social reasoning behind this? Behind his choice? We'll see. So, anyways, a couple of the stories I did want to talk to you that actually relate to this a little bit. So, yeah. Here's the article I was talking about. We talk about compassion. It's a religious day. We talk about compassion. A judge blocks deportation flight of Asian migrants to Libya. Once again, if you don't know where Libya is, it's northern Africa. It's a shithole because it's been under civil war. And before that, under Muammar Gaddafi in the 80s, who was a dictator and a terrorist, we bombed the crap out of it. Obama and Hillary Clinton bombed the crap out of it. It's a bad place. I mean, it's where our embassy was attacked, our ambassadors killed. It's not a nice place. But apparently, we're okay with sending migrants from the Philippines, Vietnam, and Laos, which is on the other side of the world, folks. I mean, we all know that, right? We all know where Vietnam is. We've all heard the story of the Vietnam War. Laos is right next to it. Philippines, island chain right next, near it, South Pacific. So a federal judge granted a temporary restraining order preventing migrants from being sent to Libya or any other third country after immigration attorneys filed an emergency motion Wednesday. I don't understand how this is a thing. I understand deporting someone because they're an illegal immigrant. But I don't understand how it's a thing deporting them to a country that they have no business going to or have no, like, that's just a death sentence, really. Imagine I just pick you up, I'm going to drop you off in, I don't know, pretend you're a 25-year-old white dude from, I don't know, Indianapolis or right inside Indiana. And you get picked up and say, I'm going to drop you off with no money, supplies, or anything. I'm going to drop you off in Madagascar. Good luck. I think you'd be dead in a week. So I'm confused with this. Again, I try to agree with a lot of the immigration policies that make sense, because a lot of them do make sense. But then you get stuff like this, and it's like, man, I can't really defend this. I really can't. And you know, this isn't the first time I heard of this. So when I was living in Massachusetts, there was a family member who had overstayed his visa. It was an accident. It was just hanging out, having a good time, overstayed a visa. Now, this gentleman, when I first met him, I thought he was Vietnamese. I said, this isn't Europe. This isn't a family member. My wife's guy looks Vietnamese. He literally looked Vietnamese. No, Mexican. Well, when they went to put him on a plane because he got in trouble for overstaying his visa, they were putting him on a plane to Vietnam. And he's like, I'm not from Vietnam. He actually started speaking Spanish. I'm Mexican. Thank God they took him off the plane. They put him on a regular plane back to Mexico where he lives. But this happens, but I don't understand how it happens. But it gets a little worse. In one case, the attorney said in the motion, immigration and customs enforcement officers at a South Texas detention facility gathered several detainees in a room. The detainees were told that they needed to sign a document agreeing to be deported to Libya. When they refused, they were then put in separate rooms, cuffed in, and forced to sign the document the motion says. Okay, it gets a little worse, like I said. Again, just send them, if they're from Vietnam, send them back to Vietnam. If they're from Laos, send them back to Laos. The government categorically denies the existence of any agreement or coordination with it regarding reception of any migrants deported from the United States, it said. It also suggested that some parallel parties that are not subject to legitimacy could be involved with the developments. That's a fancy way for saying we don't know who's involved. That's just a fancy way of covering your ass. Okay? But again, if you want to deport people, that's fine because they committed a crime or they're here illegal. That's fine. Send them back to where they came from. Don't send them back to someplace they don't belong. That's just cruel. I mean, yeah, sometimes you think about it, it's kind of funny. Like if it happened, you're like, all right, what do I do now? Talk about an adventure in a lifetime. But I mean, come on, it's kind of cruel. But yeah. And it might be that Vietnam, Laos, and Philippines aren't accepting migrants back. And that might be the reason why. But if that's the case, then we can't just send them anywhere, right? And if I had a choice, if someone put a paper in front of me, so we're going to send you to Libya, can I have the one that says they're going to send me to France? We say there's some social nets over there. I can get a baguette and a croissant. See the Eiffel Tower, you know? Do something that way. I mean, maybe give them a choice. I don't know. It's stuff like this that makes it hard, again, to defend everything. And it's stuff like this, it makes you think, okay, there's a lot of not common sense stuff going on, and it's going to get us into trouble. Just like this one. Now, apparently the Trump administration, all right, so here's the two sides of the story with this guy. We all know this guy, right? By now. We all know him, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. If you read this article, he was illegally removed or mistakenly removed from the country and sent to the prison in El Salvador. If you read certain news outlets, he was wrongfully taken out. If you listen to the other news outlets in the Trump administration, he is a MS-13 gang member, or a Trinidad, or whichever one he is. He's been involved in human trafficking, drug trafficking, child abuse. So he's either the devil, or he's here illegally and did nothing, and that's it. And we took him anyways and sent him to a bad place. Well, now the Trump administration is invoking the state secrets privilege, so they don't have to give information on this guy or why they think what they think, which again, it makes it hard to defend the case. Like if he's here illegally and he got deported, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I have been. I always will be. I'm okay with that. If he's here illegally. If he's here illegally and committed crimes or is involved in crimes and he got deported, I'm okay with that too. But if your case is predicated on information and evidence, you can't just say it's a state. What state secret? What state secret is this guy holding? What state secret is this? Is the revelations about this gentleman going to blow open? He's an illegal immigrant from Maryland. I don't think he's got CIA secrets. I don't think he's NSA shit going on. I don't think he's got undercover operatives in his back pocket. So whatever's going on. So again, one of these things that makes it hard. And we talk about the election of the Pope. It's compassion, folks. So there's a lack of compassion. There's a lack of transparency, a lack of explanation in some of these things that are going on. Again, makes it hard to defend. And I think that's why you're seeing sort of a little bit of a turn. You're seeing a downturn in Trump's approval ratings. You're seeing things like that. Okay. Oof. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, because we always follow this stuff. And I read through there are 60,000 documents. I'm sorry, I only read 300 of them so far. They got released today. I can't read that fast. 300 documents out of 60,000, give me some time. The Trump administration releases 60,000 more files on RFK assassination. Interesting, the ones that I read. Sirhan did it. There's nothing to change that. There's no grand conspiracy in there. There is the mentioning of a tape that was discovered that supposedly had the audio recording of the shooting and supposedly showed 13 shots, not 8, which means there would have been a second gunman. But then the lab results of that tape, that magnetic tape, came in. The tape was recorded at twice the normal speed. The tape contained multiple different recordings that were not matching recordings, meaning certain things were from older recordings and younger recordings, things like that. And there was distinctive interference of other types of things. So one of the big things is everybody's held on to this tape that was given back in the 1970s. They said, there's 13 shots on this tape. You can hear it. And that conspiracies came from that. The tape is a fraud. It's a fraud. So that was part of the 300 pages I read. The notes for Sirhan wrote about Bobby Kennedy needing to die just like his brother before shooting him. Okay. The frantic history of Sirhan trying to get a renewed passport to get out of the United States and back to Greece and then eventually back to Jerusalem where he's from. Days before the assassination, where he was trying to get even an emergency passport to pick up at the airport in New York after he left L.A. After shooting Kennedy, does not paint a picture of innocence for this man. And then there's just a bunch of stuff, a chain of evidence stuff that I read. I think is good to know. A lot of the evidence, this assassination, the investigation was handled by the L.A. County Sheriff's Department. And a lot of the evidence until the 70s and 80s was held by the LA County Sheriff's Department. And then it shows basically chain of custody of all that evidence being carefully documented, preserved, labeled, packaged, and shipped from LA to FBI headquarters to be put on public display at some point in time. And some of this evidence includes DNA. By that, I mean blood, brain matter, things like that. So it just kind of shows that, hey, we were following the processes. There's nothing to see here. There's no smoke. There's no fire. So on this, I got to say, Sirhan did it. And he admitted to doing it right after. And then he recanted his story. Why? Because he's crazy. Crazy person. Just wanted to kill the Kennedys. So I'll continue to read through the 60,000 documents. And I would suggest you don't, because some of them are just like a waste of time. There are multiple bomb threats, multiple phone calls for death threats made to at the time, Senator Kennedy's offices, election offices in Omaha, Nebraska, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in Los Angeles, and other places. Multiple threats against his life, multiple false alarms for incendiary devices aimed at harming him or his staff. And you can read all about those and see where the investigations go. And a lot of them go nowhere because at the time you couldn't really, there were no tracing of calls, so they had to wait for them to call back if they ever did call back, which rarely they ever called back. But a lot of false alarms, things like that. A lot of weird stories. There's one I read. This woman sits down at a diner. She's eating her food. Two white guys sit down next to her in a booth, in a booth next to her, and they start talking about blowing something up in New York. Of course, this lady lives in Los Angeles. So she reported it. It goes nowhere. There was no bombing in New York to ever kind of coincide with this, so it goes nowhere. But it's weird that it's just sort of like, New York, senator from New York, anything like that gets thrown in to be like, okay, we're going to leave no stone unturned. Are these domestic terrorists, things like that? Was this an attack? And they talk about getting the family and things like that. So a lot of that, but in the end, Sirhan did it. In the end, he did it. In the end, he shot the man who probably would have been the second Kennedy to be president. And it's a shame. Both brothers died, and then we were left with Ted Kennedy, my senator from Massachusetts for a long, long time, who I think was wise enough to say, you know what, I'm not running for president. I'll stay senator. I've seen how these things work out. Of course, there was that he drove his car into Chappaquiddick and killed a girl, so there's that too. If you don't know what Chappaquiddick is, that's a fun story. Not fun as in like funny, fun as like, Jesus, there's a lot of intrigue and shit that used to go on. But yeah, so if you're interested in reading these, you can get these. I get the website up here. If you're interested in reading any of the records related to the assassination of Senator Robert J. Kennedy, you just go to archives.gov/. Well, if you just go to archives.gov here, we'll just do this here. This is archives.gov. You get to the front page. Here are all the records that are released about the president, about John F. Kennedy's assassination. Here are all the records related to the assassination of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. And just today, Kash Patel did say he's going to release in the near future all records, all FBI work, all FBI paperwork on Jeffrey Epstein. That ought to be fun. We did that one last time. That was interesting. That was definitely interesting. So, but again, like I said, if you go into these records, all right, you're going to come down and you're going to get 10 at a time. It's 175. So you get stuff that looks like this. And there is some redactions. Social Security Administration approved by this person that has nothing to do with it. And this starts out by telling you about the tape that I just talked about that has nothing to do with nothing. But then you get stuff like, let me get one of them. Yeah, you just get the same thing repeated over and over again because they have to retype it. They literally retype this stuff like a million times over. And then you get this. It's like, okay, this document literally talks about what this document and this document is. Literally. So you got to sift through a lot of this. I mean, you can play like a little bit of phone tag. You're like, I'm going to go to number 5 and let's see what we got here. Yep. You got a mugshot. I didn't expect the mugshot. Okay. What else we got? Yeah, there we go. Iraq mission to the United Nations, Iraq terrorism. Yeah, there's a lot of terrorism in this stuff. Yeah, this is Sirhan Bishra. Sirhan. So that's Sirhan. Associates of them. So there's a lot of this stuff going. But if you want to filter through it and try to put together some stuff, Mary Sirhan, Sharif Sirhan is I believe it's his mother and father. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that you could go in there, and if you want to know the history of it all, you want to look for your own answer. That's fine. That's cool. Sirhan did it, dude. I'm saving you a lot of time. And some of the stuff is marked up like it's hard to read. All right. It is hard to read. And some of it's just deep background stuff. It's sort of like, really? Stuff you just don't care to know. Stuff you don't care to know. Like this. Okay. Relissair to New York. Requesting New York to interview William Barry as to occupants in an ambulance enclosed for Los Angeles are 30 copies of an FD-302 containing results of interview with Barry, which stated that Ethel Kennedy, Gene Smith, Fred Dutton, Warren Rogers of Look magazine, Barry and the ambulance driver were in the ambulance. What this has to do with anything, it just means that they were in the ambulance when they brought Robert Kennedy out. It's literally that type of stuff. Yeah, so, and they were able to identify Sirhan, by the way, those people. It's an interesting piece of history. And again, the same thing with the JFK one. Tons and tons and tons of, yeah, see, this is the 2023 release, 2024. Here's the 2025 release. Again, 257 pages, so way more because, well, of course there would be. But that's where you go if you want to see this stuff, if you want to read it yourself, if it's interesting to you. But after reading a lot of the JFK stuff, and I did read most of the JFK stuff, Lee Harvey Oswald did it. He did. We effed up. We knew who he was. We knew he was a nut job. We knew that he was planning something. He was on our radar. We knew all about him. But we knew he was somebody we should probably not let near the President of the United States. But nothing in those JFK files made me go, oh, there's a conspiracy. No. Oswald did it. And I've always been a member of the camp of that he didn't do it. Like, I didn't even think he was even involved in the shooting. You watch Oliver Stone's film, gets it totally wrong. Oliver Stone's film, JFK, gets everything totally wrong. It's totally unfactual. But there we go. All right, but that's south of the border, everybody. It's 1 o'clock down here in south of the border. And I will be back later on. We're going to be streaming some video games, and we're going to be doing Late Night with the Gringo later on tonight with our pop culture version of stuff. And that's about it. All right, with that, I'm still your reluctant gringo from somewhere. Again, south of the border, below the Rio Grande. Salud, a huevo to my fellow Catholics. Congratulations. We have a Pope. Let's get on out of here. And I won't, because we did the Pope, I'm not going to do the usual outro. Okay, I will do the usual outro.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans?
So long, gay boys!